women playwrights from the past. And this play will mark the 48th play by 37 playwrights or 38 playwrights that we've done from the years circa 955 to 1970. 1970 is our cutoff date. And we discover fascinating things about these women all the time. It's really completely changing not just our notion of what the Western theater canon is, but women's role in every aspect of Western civilization. So, Lynn Marie Macy is going to tell you a little bit more about the play, and the playwright's going to put the play in context for you. We'll go right into the reading, and then when the reading's done, we'll take a break and we'll have some wine and nibbles and Q&A. We hope you'll stay for that. Thanks very much. Oh, and if you have a phone, just make it silent, please.
Hello. My name is Lynn Marie Macy, and I am a playwright and a director and sometimes a performer as well. And what I'm going to share with you today is my impressions that I had personally while working on the information that you have in your programs, and I hope you get a chance to read all of that. It's really interesting. And my subject is who was Katherine Trotter Coburn, a rebel or a saint? So much mystery surrounds most historical personalities. We research, read all we can, look into their silent, staring eyes, hoping to glean a clue as to their true nature, and then we make our best assessments about the significant contributions of their lives. But in the end, we can never really know them, except perhaps in our imaginations. Katherine Trotter Coburn is a perfect case in point. And I'm convinced that when I first started working on this, that her name was pronounced Coburn. And I couldn't remember why, but I knew absolutely her name is pronounced Coburn. And the reason I'm mentioning this and bringing this up is it finally hit me that I had worked on a play several years ago called The Madman's Advocate. And it was by Sarah Caldwell Coburn. And the play was about her great-great-grandfather, Sir Alexander Cockburn. And it was based on the case of the madman who tried to assassinate Prime Minister Peel and who managed to kill instead his secretary Drummond. And the reason I bring this up is I'm quite convinced that the Reverend Patrick Coburn, her husband, came from the same Scottish Coburn family. So from the little that I was able to find out about him, they are all from, I think he's just another branch of that famous ancient Coburn family. So I got to meet Sarah Caldwell Coburn, so I know it's pronounced Coburn. So, very little is known about Katherine Trotter Coburn's early life. We do know she was born into a prominent family with Scottish roots, but we do not know exactly when. Was it 1679 or 1674, according to various evidence and biographers. We do know her naval officer father, Captain David Trotter, died when she was still young. So we do not fully know how his struggling family survived without him. We can make assumptions about her mother's aristocratic connections, assisting her children with their educations and upbringing. She was a close relation to Lord Bellenden and the Duke of Lauderdale, both powerful advisors to King Charles II, and also the Earl of Perth, which I could not figure out as hard as I tried which Earl of Perth they were referring to, but I do believe it is the same Earl of Perth who allowed the Perth Amboy in New Jersey to be founded. He gave the money for the settlers to go to New Jersey, found Perth Amboy, and they have his statue in front of the city hall, and it's the oldest graves there are dated from the 1690s, so it's exactly the same period as this, so I feel that must be the same guy. And it's so much fun to discover, the amazing history that's in your own backyard. Excuse me. Also, Captain Trotter was known to King Charles and very respected by him and his brother, James. So thankfully, the fatherless family continued to survive, and Katherine thrived in her education. She was known for being clever and precocious, with an insatiable thirst for knowledge. She began writing prose and verse when very young, and sending witty poems to friends and relatives. One can only surmise how young Katherine astounded everyone around her by converting to the Catholic religion at a very early age. A bold course of action after Catholic James II had been deposed, and his Protestant daughter and nephew ascended to the throne. Anti-Catholic sentiment abounded. How did this happen? Was she influenced by a supportive Catholic relative? Or perhaps a friend or teacher? Or perhaps she felt an affinity for the Scottish Jacobite movement? We may never know. Trotter herself is a case study in contrasts. She was never shy or retiring. Her reputation was as a gregarious, charming, and very opinionated young lady. Her relationships were intense, encompassing personal visits, in-depth, lengthy conversations, and voluminous correspondence on a wide variety of topics. It was clear religion was important to her throughout her life, and hers was not a typical, quiet, retiring sort of piety, but rather a seize-the-day experience of the most that life has to offer brand of zeal. Not to be associated with immorality, by the way, which she eschewed. It is curious to note, in Jane Austen's day, the late Georgian Regency period, a woman would never correspond with a man who was not her avowed fiancé. Yet Katherine is known to have corresponded with several gentlemen of her acquaintance. It's curious, and I wonder when that scandalous nature of this kind of communication changed. In 1693, her first work published was an epistolary novel called The Adventures of a Young Lady. The extroverted young heroine callously toys with the affections of one young man after another, only to send them all packing and find herself without friends. This puzzling little gem also brings to mind Jane Austen's Lady Susan, also an epistolary novella about a bold, though less than conventional heroine, written when its author was just a teenager. It is difficult not to draw comparison, though 100 years stood between them. Austen's novella is the more sophisticated, but the one thing that both teenage authors had in common was a love of the theater. Both authors and their heroines frequented the theater. Young Katherine Trotter was thoroughly connected in the London social circles. When her first play, Agnes de Castro, was published, it included a dedication to the Earl of Dorset and Middlesex, who was believed to be a friend and advisor. Wait a minute. Is this the same Charles Sackville, 6th Earl of Dorset, 1st Earl of Middlesex, the notorious Restoration rake, former lover of actress Nell Gwynn, who ultimately became mistress to King Charles II? Is this Charles Sackville, who was once indicted for murder and once nearly killed in a duel? Yeah, that's the guy. His country estate is the incredible sprawling Jacobean Knoll House in Kent. I happen to have an opportunity to visit it. It's run by English Heritage now, and it is one of the most well-preserved Jacobean interiors that you'll find in the UK. It's amazing. And it is very interesting. Sackville's gaiety and wit were renowned, and he was beloved by the people. His fellow notorious rake, Lord Rochester, lamented to the king that Sackville could get away with anything. Interesting, for Charles Sackville was a generous patron of men of letters. He championed John Dryden, Matthew Prior, Edmund Waller, Samuel Butler, William Wycherley, and Horace Walpole. Was this notorious rake now guiding our pious young Katherine Trotter into a career onto the English stage? Older and perhaps steadier now. The Earl of Dorset was certainly a stalwart behind the scenes of the Restoration Theatre from its very beginnings, and he had every connection required to help Katherine Trotter gain entrance. Where and when did they meet? Was it by accident? Or did she send him verses like so many others? Had she written a play? Or did he encourage her to do so? We may never know. Trotter, however, excelled at writing for the stage. Her work was well received. Her plays of the 1690s shattered Restoration theatrical norms. Her language is direct, her characters more grounded, her subject matter morality and justice. She had her passions, her opinions, and a career as an author. I can't help but think of her as a modern woman of the Restoration. She became a celebrity and the talk of the town. She also wrote verses and religious and philosophical essays that were highly lauded at the time. Katherine Trotter was also often described as having a fragile constitution. She apparently could not walk more than a mile without becoming violently ill. This was according to her 19th century biographer, Jane Williams. How can a person, a human being so fragile, be so simultaneously strong? In 1707, she famously left the Catholic faith and returned to the Church of England, publishing an essay about her motivations for doing so. As luck would have it, she met an Anglican minister, the Reverend Katherine Coburn. The couple married and had 4 children. Now, how does someone so physically frail survive giving birth to 4 children in that day and age? We may never know.
She didn't need to walk.
Perhaps that is why between 1708, the year of their marriage, and 1724, she has nothing published. After 1724, Trotter returned to writing verses and philosophical and religious essays. There is a sense that her early association with the theater may have damaged her reputation, and she never wrote plays again. Certainly after Katherine married and left London, there were rumors of flirtations, even adultery, mostly stemming from Delarivier Manley, who once considered Trotter a friend, but who now publicly accuses her of holier-than-thou hypocrisy, which leads one to think that Trotter may have burned the bridges of her past, along with her Catholic faith. It is a mystery, and we may never know for sure. Katherine Trotter Coburn, pious but brazen, confident but wavering, fragile but strong. Could any of us now living fit neatly and tidily into a single box? To be sure, her transformation was a loss for the theater. I think her never writing another play is the end of an era. And think of the plays that she might have written had she not been the wife of a minister. I often think of the same thing about Jane Austen, who was tempted to write plays as a youngster, but demurred from actually writing for the theater as the daughter of an Anglican minister. It just wasn't done. Still, Katherine Trotter Coburn authored 5 plays, 4 tragedies, and a comedy. Fatal Friendship was the second and most popular. When this play was published, she received many accolades for her superior abilities and virtues. Thank you.
And we're going to hear one of the accolades that is in the published play before the play starts.
Yes.
The famed Aurinas and Astraeus lives, with never-dying wit, bless Charles's days. And you suppose wit could no higher rise, till you, succeeding, tear from them the prize. More just applause is yours who check the rage of reigning vice that has debauched the stage, and dare show virtue in a vicious age, with eager wishing eyes the day we sought, when to its first design the drama might be brought. Now an unusual charm our hearts have seized, for we at once both profit and are pleased. And you may boast that by your skillful hand you done what senates did in vain command. For such examples bear a mighty sway, since none in vicious paths will choose to stray, when wit and beauty join to lead in virtue's way. The Fatal Friendship, Act 1, Scene 1, enter Bellegarde and Felicia.